This is Blacklisted News Radio. It's the 14th day of September 2013. My name is Doug Owen, and it's good to be with you here on this Saturday morning edition of Blacklisted News Radio. You can go to the website, blacklistedradio.com. Everything that you need is available for you, including podcasts and the chat room. A couple people hanging out in there. Not bad for a Saturday morning. I think the consensus is that it may be a little too early for people to be that interactive. But you can always text the show, 512-222-3067, throughout the week, anytime. I may respond, may not. We've got a lot of stuff to get into, folks. It's been a very interesting weekend. Of course, this 12th anniversary of September 11th, 2001, was greeted with many more questions than usual. And I think that we have jumped the shark when it comes to 9/11 truth, in the sense that people can talk about the evidence, Building 7. They can talk about what may have happened, what may not have happened there on that frightful day. And there's not that emotional response that you used to get. 2006, 2005, 2004, when I really started questioning a lot of the events that had surrounded 9/11, and not just the event itself, the false flag attack, which in my estimation, it absolutely is. The overwhelming proof towards an inside job, or at least an intelligence agency, along with different compartmentalized honeycomb aspects to this operation, would have had to have happened. And Dick Cheney and Don Rumsfeld definitely intimately involved in the orchestration and making sure that this could happen. They paved the way along with all of the other people that they work for. So they are minions themselves, and we could really rehash all of it. I think that there's a lot of people out there that have done a lot better job than I would, trying to compel people that, hey, they should look and rethink 9/11. So it's great to see that. It's great to see more people starting to talk about these issues. But as the emotional connection is removed, the effectiveness is kind of removed as well. You look at the JFK assassination. The consensus is, people don't believe that Oswald acted alone. But that in and of itself has not created political change in this country. Now, we all know that something happened. Most people would agree that the CIA, working in tandem, or maybe other aspects of the shadow government and the ties to the mob and other nefarious ne'er-do-wells may have been involved. But really, there's been no political change that has come of this. This hasn't turned into a political movement. I remember in I'm trying to think now, it was probably about 2006, listening to Webster Griffin Tarpley, who was, this is before, the loose change, and, well, this is probably maybe 2005 now, I'm thinking back. It's been a while. But basically he was trying to create a political movement out of 9/11 truth, quote unquote. And the problem with that is that when you have people that are very independent and, let's be honest, skeptics to the nth degree, they are not going to necessarily come together for some political action committee and start, playing nice. I mean, you have a lot of independent people, and you have to be pretty isolated from groupthink to come to the realization that there's some big problems with the story. There's some really big problems with the story, and let's move past the story and just look at what was done out of what it precipitated and what has been done out of these tragedies, and with these tragedies in the rearview mirror, what has been accomplished by the state. So, we could talk about all of the different aspects of 9/11. I know a lot of people have, and it was great to see so much of I think, the mainstream media actually giving a couple shakes to the architects and engineers of 9/11 Truth and some other groups that are pretty academic and a lot more credible than just people like myself, ranting and raving talk show hosts and podcasters. So Let's just jump right in. I wanted to talk first about what's happening with journalism. It's the 21st century. We have computers. We have the ability to reach one another in microseconds, milliseconds, nanoseconds in some cases. We have this interconnected global framework, this telecommunication system that allows us to transmit data, thoughts, information to one another in a matter of seconds, literally. Well, that's a big problem for those out there that want to control the message. And there's many people that want to control the message, not just in government, not just in the military-industrial complex and the intelligence agencies and the CIA and the Pentagon and the executive branch and other governments across the nation and their power brokers. I mean, of course, those people want to control the message. Media moguls. I mean, there's a lot of them that we can look at. Berlusconi. Fine example of a man who has kept his country, Italy, in the dark ages. The internet platform that they have there today is completely dilapidated and so archaic. And that's because, well, they wanted to control the message. Can't have all the people, can't have all the slaves going to the internet and getting a contrarian viewpoint on politics and falling out of the consensus Delphi. So they want to do something very similar here. Dianne Feinstein, now people are so excited that Matt Drudge called her a fascist. If you've been catching on to that meme, I don't know why everybody gives Matt Drudge the credit that I guess he deserves in some respects. I mean, I like the fact that the guy gets millions and millions of hits daily just putting up links on a website. I mean, I applaud that. But he was handed that whole Monica Lewinsky scandal. You know, I mean, he might as well have just been planted into the conservative collective. I mean, a complete plant, and became highly famous out of this event. And most of the people that you see in media, it's some event that catalyzes their whole career. And I'll give you an example. Jim Rome. Jim Rome is, if you're not aware, he's a talk show host. He does sports talk radio. He has a show on Showtime. And he's pretty famous. I don't have a TV, so I don't know how great his TV presence is, but I listen to him every once in a while. At least I used to when he was in the area. But Jim Rome is a guy that became famous because Jim Everett punched him in the face on TV because he kept calling him Chrissy. So it's one big event, one moment that makes these people's careers. Career. Sounds like Korea. That's how they say it over there. Career. Yeah, their careers. That is how they propel themselves into this famous status. And you need something like that. Matt Drudge did it with the Monica Lewinsky scandal. Others, I mean, yeah, there's just so many of them that have had that one pivotal moment that has thrust their career because of something. Geraldo being hit in the face by a neo-Nazi with a chair, breaking his nose. Or maybe, going into Al Capone's vault and finding nothing. That might have been the big moment for him. Anyway, I know I'm digressing here a little bit. I want to talk about Dianne Feinstein, and she's a fascist. She is a fascist. I think that what Matt Drudge called her is correct. I just wanted to note how the people just get so excited. Matt Drudge, no longer just a conservative Republican. Now he's saying that it's the people versus the government. It's libertarianism against authoritarianism. People applaud that. It's just like, come on. Don't get so excited because one person has decided to agree with you. Oh my God, he agrees with me. I love him. Please, geez. All right, so here's the audio from Dianne Feinstein. Kudos to Breitbart. That's where I found this last night. And she lays out why people like myself and most of you out there are not media, and that there is a division between who is media, who is not media, and that there should be some kind of government regulation over who is and who is not media. So we'll play your clip here and talk about it.
Mr. Chairman, first of all, I'd like to thank Senator Durbin and his staff. You've been a good and loyal partner in this for 4 years now. And I'd like to thank Senator Schumer for being willing, and his people who are terrific, to sit down and see if we couldn't work this out. Let me explain why I think this amendment is needed. I've had long-standing concerns that the language in the bill as introduced would grant a special privilege to people who really aren't reporters at all, who have no professional qualifications whatsoever. The fundamental issue behind...
All right, so I have to stop her. I'm sorry. Okay, this is why you have to pay attention to the words. Privilege. It's not your right. You don't have a right to a free press. You don't have a right to free speech. You're not protected as an individual as some a-hole who just spent $50 and started up a website. Or maybe you just signed up for your free WordPress blog and you got your camcorder out there and you're just going after people. Luke Rudkowski, he's a prime example of the fake it till you make it media that is becoming Vice as well. Vice News is another example of that. Actually, Luke put out a video just a few weeks ago explaining the fake it till you make it, becoming a press passed person, just making your own press pass and going out there and asking questions. Well, that offends the hell out of Dianne Feinstein, that some a-hole can just go ahead and get an ID wrap around a microphone with his domain name and chase people down and ask them questions. And they're not supposed to be protected. They don't get the special privilege. And, of course, if you have organizations like The Guardian, like The Washington Post, I know that now Bezos owns it. Maybe we have some divergence in what, business as usual or what it's actually trying to accomplish now with its mission. But Feinstein is, number one, she's scared. She fears the American people starting to question her statistics. They've been able to get an assault rifle or weapons ban in California. That happened this week. And, of course, it's going to fall into the courts, and we'll see where that all lays out at the end of the day. But she's creating this idea that there are special outlets where you can vet information, where information is sacred, and that you have people that have gone to college and they understand the ramifications and the vetting process, and how there are, there really are some ethical aspects to being a journalist. And I kind of agree in that regard, but not that there's anything special between somebody that gives information to Doug Owen, you, or the Washington Post. Are they not a whistleblower? And this is what they're trying to create, are these special legal ways for people to disseminate information so that government is still in control.
This amendment is, should this privilege apply to anyone, to a 17-year-old who drops out of high school, buys a website for $5?
That's me. I didn't drop out of high school. I went to a couple of years of college here. I went to the military, but my website didn't cost a lot of money when I first initially built it. Now it's quite expensive because of bandwidth, but this is funny. This is the distinction.
Out of high school, buys a website for $5 and starts a blog. Or should it apply to journalists, to reporters who have bona fide credentials? This bill is described.
And I love the word bona fide. Okay, I'm going to use that more often. This show is bona fide truth.
As a reporter shield bill, so I believe it should be applied to real reporters. The attorney-client privilege applies to attorneys, not any non-legal advisor. The spousal privilege applies to spouses, not to boyfriends and girlfriends. As I described the last time this committee passed this legislation, this could have been interpreted to cover hate websites, like that of the neo-Nazi organization.
Now, why can't the neo-Nazis have their own representatives? I mean, and this is why we have the First Amendment, to protect the most vile speech, not speech that we can all get along with, not that that's inert speech, things that aren't charged with hate or anger or, in some cases, vitriol. That's what we want to protect. We want to protect that. That's why we have these rights. And this gets more into the definition between privileges, and that's pretty unconstitutional in my mind. You shouldn't have taxation based on, it has to be equal, not on special privileges. But we've gone down that road for quite some time now. I don't know if there's a U-turn in the very near future in that line of thinking, because I don't think that the tax code or the privilege system is, number one, effective. Number two, it's so arbitrary and so selective that it cannot be constitutional, and it cannot be properly enforced when you have literally every person that participates in filing income taxes in some form or fashion not doing it correctly or legally or breaking the law. And you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone that is doing it correctly. Even Timothy Geithner had a $30,000 oversight. If I had a $30,000 oversight, I would be in jail. But there are people that are elite. People like Dianne Feinstein and her banker husband. So anyway, she doesn't want these special privileges. And I will give her this, that you do have these special relationships that are exempt from scrutiny by government, one of which being the attorney-client privilege. But let's not forget the fact that just about all of these other things, your private conversations with your doctor, all of that has been chipped away, and there is no reasonable expectation that anybody that has been following this should have, including myself. And that's what this show's about, knowing what it should be and what it really is. And you shouldn't have that unreasonable expectation that they're not giving your health information to Israel. We'll talk about that more here coming up, but I'll let her finish. So she's saying, you punk dropout kids are not freaking journalists. You don't get the privilege under the new rules and amendments to Dianne Feinstein's bill here. God.
National Socialist Movement, or even Senate.
Yeah, the National Socialist Movement. What's wrong with the National Socialist Movement? I can't believe that she's not part of this. Or I bet if they had $10 million to give to her campaign, she would speak to the National Socialist Movement. I bet you if you had enough money, she would speak to Klansmen and tell them about gun control. If they could get on board with gun control, she might talk to them. They probably wouldn't like her Jewish husband, but, she's a whore for money. She's a whore for the powers that be, and she's just a really disgusting person. When you listen to her, she's so condescending. I'm sorry, I don't mean to condescend to you, Feinstein, but I just don't think that you're that smart or brilliant.
Press secretaries. So I am very grateful that the Media Coalition and Senator Schumer worked cooperatively with Senator Durbin and me to make sure that...
Oh, and by the way, during this, Chucky Schumer, okay, he's in this pinstripe suit, and he's talking like a college football coach. He has his hand over his mouth, so he's obviously saying something that he doesn't want to be read. But, I mean, using these mafiaistic tactics and body language, and, he's... I don't want to get into his bedroom manner or, religious or political ideology, but the guy is just exuding scumbag-ishness. And if you go to the video and you watch this, if you dare want to listen to it again, or if you dare to try to make it through it, he's there just, I don't know, just really acting shifty, and the body language is just really creepy.
The bill doesn't do that. So this amendment effectively sets up a test for establishing bona fide credentials that make one a legitimate journalist.
I'm a bona fide.
The first part of our amendment, page 5, starting on line 15, defines a covered journalist as someone who is an employee, agent, or independent contractor for a media entity.
All right, so media entity. What's a media entity? Who defines this? This is fascism. This is where the government defines what it is to be a farmer. You're a farmer. No. You need a bona fide certificate from the government, and you have to buy products from A, B, or C and have private insurance that, oh, by the way, Chucky Schumer or some other capitalist corporate venture type has provided. You have to buy it from them. You know, it's just like so many of the hypocrisies in all of this. We care about you, and we have a solution. And by the way, I just happen to own the solution, and I'm going to sell it to government and force it upon you because I am bona fide. Let me see. Do I want to even finish this? She goes on to define different entities and agencies, so you'll figure out, if you listen to the rest of this, whether you fit under her criteria. And I don't think this is going anywhere. I think it'll be mounted with ferocious roars from the blogosphere. People like myself are offended. You should be as well. Let's give her a second here.
That as part of the compromise, we took out the word salaried before employee, as this apparently caused some unnecessary worry to some people. We included a very broad list of media entities the journalist can be affiliated with, including newspapers, news websites, and, quote, any other news service distributed digitally, among other things. Then we have a functional test, which is essentially the same as what is in the bill now. Recognizing the migration of reporters away from newspapers and magazines as those industries struggle, we also included, on page 7, starting on line 17, a provision for a journalist to establish their journalistic bona fides, even if they're not currently affiliated with a media entity, through look-back provisions. As part of the compromise, we lengthened how far back in time the journalist's past experience could be.
So, yeah, and this goes on for a while, and it ends up with you wondering, okay, and maybe blacklistednews.com, I'm digitally pushing news out there to the people. Would I fall under this? I don't know. Lee Rogers writes articles calling Dianne Feinstein nasty names. Would she want to protect me? Am I a bona fide journalist? I'll let you out there listening to the podcast to decide that. I don't want to spend too much more time on it, but this kind of segs into this Chinese billionaire businessman who has been detained for dissent. If you haven't heard about Teng Bio, he's a Beijing-based rights activist lawyer, and he is the one who has told us about Wang Gongquan, and he has been missing. He has been black vanned, and nobody knows where the billionaire is. Now, I think it's important to understand, because we're talking about fascism, and I think it's a perfect segue into what has become really capitalist fascism 101 in China, and that is where you have these people that are very, very rich, but the corruption has pretty much decayed or destroyed. It has completely decayed from within the infrastructure, the society. And what's happened is you've had really these vultures that have been working with Western sponsors and the Chinese state that have just become these gazillionaires that are buying up property in the United States and London, trying to export what money they can and escape, because it's a mad dash to get out of China. Nobody wants to be there, and if you have billions of U.S. dollars, there's no reason to be there. You know, there's no reason that you don't want to be in London, because that's the financial ecocenter of the world, and that's where you want to be if you have lots of money. You want to be in London. You want to have a flat. You want to, figure out whether you can put your money with Barclays, or maybe manipulate LIBOR or something else that you can get into, or just become maybe a real estate speculator. Do you really want to hang out and possibly be thrown into the execution van, especially if you're corrupt? So it's a mad dash for many of these bazillionaires in Russia. This guy apparently was speaking in defense of an activist who's been jailed. That is what one person is saying. But, I mean, it shows you how very similarly we have these arbitrary laws that are being used to selectively go after political targets. Okay, the NSA is using their government power to monitor love interest. So these takeaways and comparisons, I think, are important to note, because we have this same kind of deep corruption that has led to the decadence of the government in China. Not that it was ever great, and the Communist Party and the war military factions and these different aspects of it. It's very convoluted, and I'm really not enough up on the Chinese system to really say whether it's good or bad, but I really gauge it by the response of the people that are rioting on almost a daily basis, taking their CEOs captive in some cases. You have the PLA systematically going out and assassinating people on a pretty regular basis, taking shots at Buddhist monks and others that are trying to make pilgrimage to Tibet. The political assassinations, the organ harvesting, one child, basically Kissinger one world policies for the domestic population, gender side. I mean, those are the things that I kind of look at when I look at China. Cheap crap that I don't want. It's a shame. It's a shame that stuff that you need to live today, or what I need to do this podcast, most of which is built upon Chinese slave labor. Interestingly enough, I mean, a side note, I was reading just the other day that if the new iPhone was to be built in America, it would only cost $4 more. And they have these new gold iPhones. And, well, I wanted to mention the fact that the encryption on these, it's going to be now the new biometrics. And people are excited about this. It's going to be the big PR push to get people to thumb scan. And they even have gold iPhones. And I thought, a great one of those videos, the man on the street videos that people do, where they ask people, would you rather have a gold iPhone or a gold coin? Obviously worth more than a gold iPhone, just to see how many people would completely, turn away from the gold troy ounce to have this iPhone. I mean, obviously the value there, the perception of value is the most notable aspect of doing that. Would you like to vote for Barack Obama to enslave people? Sure, yeah, I'll sign the petition. Anyway, but I think it's important because we're going down the same path to look at how there is this selective targeting of people in power. You're going to see a lot more of that. The Koch brothers. I am not a fan of the Koch brothers. I don't know a ton about their empire, but they, of course, have their own agenda, which I know runs counter to mine because I'm not a rich billionaire that mingles in U.S. policy, and I'm not a person that tries to steer government officials into doing my bidding. So I don't think that we would have a lot of things that are common, but they have some secret bank. There's a big story about the secretive bank of the Koch brothers. You're like, wow, Coke, whatever. These guys have a huge secretive bank, and they're funding all of these different media groups to go after the liberals and target those on the left and bring about a libertarian nightmare here in America. That's their goal. Peter Thiel and other Bilderbergers are going to enslave us with robber baron capitalism, or that's at least what I read on Alternet. Anyway, you see the political targeting of these guys, regardless of good or bad, they're in the focus, and I'm surprised they haven't had more audits. government could audit and has selectively targeted people with audits based on their political ideologies. Just yesterday, it was revealed that Eric Holder was working with black ministers and teaching them and coaching them on how to get tax-exempt status and be able to give politics from the pulpit to the masses, the willing to listen. And you're like, wow, I mean, that's pretty impressive. I've never got a tax coaching lesson from the government to teach me how to subvert paying taxes and being able to use that as a political action committee. Isn't that one of Obama's big complaints? And that is that, people can get away from paying taxes, and that leads to, all of these rich white people that are, the 1% are getting away with something. Well, I mean, this is and you wouldn't expect any less, would you? Of course they're using their power and their legal ease to empower those that are putting them in power. Why wouldn't they? If you don't think that they would, then you're pretty naive. Pretty naive. All right. Let's talk about the NSA for a moment. We found out this week the NSA is sharing raw intelligence, including Americans' data, with Israel. So it's not bad enough that they are reading your emails, that they are basically using every quantum computers now to map every conversation that's happening in the world. Politicians, government officials, businesses like oil companies in South America. All of these revelations came out this week that they're all being watched, and the NSA's there, and they have their dirty little fingers in all of their itineraries and their calendars and just about anything that you have on a smartphone. Yes, on your smartphone can be listened to or extracted for whatever reason. Secret courts, maybe Section 215 of the Patriot Act. Who knows why or what government entity may want your information from their smartphone. They can get it. So don't get too excited about the stuff that you have on there. And be careful. Be careful, because the reality is that your ignorance and the evidence that they collect and would probably be able to use selectively against you is probably on your phone. People are just oblivious to the fact that they are really creating an electronic dossier of themselves and everything that they do. Good or bad, I mean, I'm not so tight with information, and I share my ideas and thoughts, and I don't mind others, and I almost expect others to make an estimation or assessment of me and my politics, because I put them out for the world to listen to. So without any geographic barrier. So I'm okay with that. Most people not. You're not a slave. The government doesn't own you, and there's no reason that they should be selling your information or giving it, number one, collecting it, or number two, giving it to a foreign entity that has been caught time and time again using information and spies within our government to help make this country a little more unsecure. And it's true. It's absolutely true. Israel is not our ally. Okay? The American people have now been designated. If the American people are designated as the target, as the ones that should be watched, and that transition, we've been talking about that for years. The transition from terrorist being fundamentalist, Durka, Muhammad Jihad types.
Durka, Muhammad Jihad.
To you and right-wing Christians and others. I mean, the Christians are definitely being targeted in this country and in the Middle East. Can't get a break. If you don't think that there's an attack on Christianity, and I'm not a Christian, I'm just saying that they are definitely attacking all the institutions where the teachings are that you and your beliefs, your sovereignty is above the collective bargain that Barack Obama's working for us on the global stage or whatever the hell he's talking about. We have a collective bargain. People just want to get by all of these new ideas or new themes. No, thank you. I'm good with the Constitution. If you could just obey that for the moment, I'd be okay with that. Or not give my personal, contact numbers to people and private companies in Israel. All right, secret deal places no legal limits on the use of data by Israelis. So they have the secret deal. Here's just a couple of the bullet points I noted. Secret deal places no legal limits on the use of data by the Israelis. So once it gets over there, they can do anything with it. It's just like having this other company, GHCQ, in Britain, monitoring the American people. It makes the legal aspect to it very convoluted. They're like, aha, see, we don't have to tell you anything because it's not the U.S. government that's collecting it. It's the private military complex in Britain or in Israel. So that's why it's okay. That's why it's legally fine. I mean, the American people the public should really, really consider this. Really consider this for a moment, okay? The only communications that are protected from going to Israel are government communications, not your communications. And, of course, they are saying, the NSA, unabashed, brazen, they're saying that this is complying with all rules and laws governing privacy, and it's pretty telling because it's not just your medical records that are making their way over there. It's financial information about you, your credit score, and a lot of that being used to judge you and judge your character. Do we want to give this deadbeat that's bankrupted 3 times? Do we want to give him a kidney? I'm not saying that that's going to be a factor in whether you get good health care as you become a seasoned person, as you become older in life. Maybe you are already there. I am getting there quickly. Looking at this kind of stuff on a daily basis is making me old beyond my age. Old beyond my age. But I guess the one good thing I could say is that I'm not so frustrated that the general public is not getting it. Because I keep looking at polls, and they are getting it. 14% of people, that's barely more than 1 in 10, think the government is doing a good job, that they can resolve problems. There's a poll that came out this week on every level. When you ask Joe Public and Sally Soccer Mom what they think about Barack Obama, the government blowing up crap in Syria, what do they think about it? Boo! They're not thrilled at all with it. 14%. 1 in 4 Republicans. I go back to this statistic because I don't know how real it is, and it just makes me laugh a little bit. But 1 in 4 Republicans believe that Barack Obama is the Antichrist. Okay, so if you can get 25% of people to believe that Barack Obama is the Antichrist, or just that kind of general consensus, then when only 14%, you can't even get kooks. Even the kooks are pissed off about this. They're like, I can't go. You have to be a government kook. You got to be a government conspiracy theorist to go along with it. So anyway, it goes beyond that. I wanted to talk about some of these other aspects, and we should. The surveillance grid. But before we get there, here it is. Poll, new low for government trust. Less than half of Americans trust the government to handle problems. An all-time low, according to the new poll. Okay, so there was 14% that said it was doing a good job, but the government has become to 50% or more of the people, according to this poll, and I think this is Pew. They don't believe the government can help them. So anyway, fascism. It's a good way to look at what's happening in Israel as well. And so I saw this, FP, Foreign Policy, a few others, TechCrunch, or TechDirt, I think, had this piece on Israel's secret intelligence unit that is spawning high-tech tycoons. So this is where the money is at. It's in creating really a product out of the people, using them as the commodity, as the resource, using us as human resources. Israel's secret intel unit spawns high-tech tycoons the Israeli military's top secret unit, 8200, the Jewish state's equivalent of the U.S. NSA, has spawned a generation of high-tech startups and more technology millionaires than many business schools. And these days, the cybersecurity sector is booming. Okay, so this is creating a high-tech tyranny and a fascist group that the expansion of the military-industrial complex, really, and now really taking over in a very cyber and very personal way, because the cyber war, I mean, it's being waged in your apartment, it's being waged in your home, it's everywhere, because we are now connected 24/7 through ones and zeros to these agencies, which is pretty weird. But so the state is now closer to omnipresence, ubiquitous listening. That was an interesting article. Go back to Wired, just put ubiquitous listening into Google, and you'll find some pretty interesting takeaways. But the amount of money that is being transferred from real things that we need in this world, I don't know, like farmers and food and jobs, and we're just creating really a nanny state where the only product is people watching one another, and we're using massive amounts of resources. This is something that you won't hear all of the greeny weenies talking about, and that is that this surveillance grid, their iPhones, all of the stuff that is so oppressive, and they would like to not think about, all those things that they would like to kind of turn away from. All of those are very non-eco-friendly. They require lots and lots of petroleum. They require lots of energy to create. So it's creating a huge carbon footprint. I know that some of you out there are like, Doug, why would you say carbon footprint? Don't use those terms. Well, and it's because those are the contradictions that people have in their own minds, the inconsistencies, the hypocrisies that they live with. Oh, cognitive dissonance. We're probably talking about it every podcast because it's so important. And when you listen to people, you talk to Joe Public, you realize, my God, these people just have so many different contradicting thoughts and ideas in their mind of what's moral, what's legal, what government purpose is, what their purpose is. I mean, all the way to their religious beliefs. You're like, wow, there's just so much broken information inside of their minds. It's really hard to kind of wrap around it. And you know, I try to wrap my mind around all of the stuff that I've been programmed with. So not to say I see through all of the fog and I have clairvoyance. Absolutely not. I'm just at the point where I don't believe my own BS. I don't believe that I know everything. I realize how little I know, and that really scares me because then I realize how much more I know than some people. The billions of people in this world that live in abject poverty, that don't have access to the internet, that even if they do, don't care, don't find it interesting. So anyway, you can get upset about it all day long. If you haven't heard about Puking Monkey, let's talk about it for a moment. Easy passes get read all over New York, not just toll booths. A really interesting piece came out of this is from, I should have put down the source. I feel bad. But this guy, Puking Monkey here, has been driving all over New York City, and he had one of the easy passes, this toll tag. And so if you go to blacklistednews.com, you can find this pretty easily. It's under easy passes. And the videos show him driving around New York City. And he actually has it connected to this it's an RFID chip. And he actually has it connected to his it looks like maybe smartphone, some other device that he has. And every time that it's read, every time that something pulls the data from that RFID, it makes this cow noise. It goes moo, and it's really wild because he's driving through New York City, and you just keep hearing moo, moo, And the toll tag that's what we have here in Texas. The easy tag is being literally read all over the place. So, conspiracy theorists, hate to use that nasty term, have often said and pointed to research that shows, and you can find it at Blacklisted News, we've been keeping track of this since 2006, that shows that almost anyone, private or public entity, can read your tag and track you and track where you're going throughout the city. That's the metadata the NSA has on you. So it's amazing, and most people are completely ignorant of it. And but people are getting more comfortable with it, and I think are even seeing how awesome it is. Biometrics being worked into your iPhone, and it's not secure. It's not any more secure. Please go to blacklistednews.com and read the piece about the thumbprint scanner and how this is not any more secure than a 15-digit password, and it is not going to make your experience on your smart device any more secure or provide any kind of. I mean, if you have it unlocked, wide open, anybody can get in it. But if you have the thumb, and I think that once enough people start screaming about this, they'll probably make it optional. But the thumb reader on your iPhone. So this is the first big rollout, and we've seen some stuff limited in the Windows platform, where the keyboard has a thumb scanner, or different military or government applications for thumb scanning. And actually, there's a pretty funny, trying to think of the name of the TV show, the Mythbusters, where they take some of these fingerprint readers and actually are able to get through them. And granted, this is a few years old, but actually just take a photocopy of their thumb and actually use that as a way to get into the door. And I'm sure you could, if you really cared to, you could lift somebody's fingerprint pretty easily just going through their garbage. Not that I would, suggest that. I don't know what you would do with it just to get into their iPhone, and how much value would be in that anyway. But it does kind of acclimate us, doesn't it? This kind of creeps me out. And yes, it's an opt-in sort of, or an opt-out if you would like, but not really. Face scanning cameras at Tri-City hockey game. It is planned to be used by the U.S. government to test the capabilities of facial recognition software that is available or in prototype stage. Eventually, state-of-the-art facial recognition technologies could be used to identify terrorists. Here's all the bullet points why they want to sell it to you. Terrorists, criminals in public areas. You don't want people with warrants and terrorist criminals just mulling around, do you? You don't want them loitering. Grab them while you can. They're in public. So there's a big sale to this. They're also talking about how Border Patrol, law enforcement, all these other agencies will be able to use this. So at this Tri-City hockey game, they're testing out this new system here. And it's going to be used to create and provide more R&D for weapons manufacturers and the rest of them that create this technology. And the people, the general public, get to be part of it. It's very reminiscent of just a few years ago in several towns in the UK. They were letting kids talk through these CCTV camera recordings that they would play over loudspeakers associated with it to basically shake people out of sleeping on benches and being general loiterers. Different acoustic weapons to irritate people's eardrums, using those, or targeting children so they don't just mull about. And then having the kids themselves record themselves yelling at pedestrians. No loitering, no littering, buddy. Get out of here. Get a job. The parents are, some parents, of course, there's always some people that were like, oh, that's great. It's awesome. More of that. We need more of this. But anyway, it creeped out a lot of people, and so kind of got stymied, which is good because it was creepy. I I guess we're beyond that point where the technology and the ability for the CCTV cameras, that used to be a pretty wild idea, just a few years back, having the technology to have this ubiquitous watching and people being corrected by the state. But now there's a lot of different types of stuff that's out there. So anyway, the hockey fans who don't want to be on the video will be given options to avoid the cameras. So basically, they're going to give you a mask, and I don't know. What else do you say about it other than that's the unfortunate thing is that's where it's all heading, and it's becoming more and more normal, and it's not just in the U.S., and it's not just a U.S. issue. Surveillance and the want of the government to monitor their people 24/7 as best as they can is on parade. Twitter is being mined to figure out when all of you out there are going to be ready to rise up and revolt against the tyrannical state. When will you have enough? When will Joe Public finally catch on to what's happening, the scam? Once they're robbed and really mad and uncomfortable, they're going to get out of that lazy boy. Once the springs start wearing through the sofas, they're going to get up off of them and they're going to say something. Now, that's going to happen maybe here in this country, maybe not, I don't know. Depends on how bad things get and how far down this process, how far down this road towards willingly just accepting evil. I think that's the best way to put it, that we're at. The German people were very smart. At some point they were okay with a little bit of evil. The Japanese people as well. Waterboarding, torture. I think it's torture, but the American people are now okay with that. They used to not be. So things change. People's viewpoints on morality definitely change. I mean, there was more talk about Miley Cyrus and her twerking than there was about Syria. Why? I don't know. I don't know, because it's a lot easier to be offended by something that you believe is a problem that you can control by hiding your children's eyes to the evil pedophile bears dancing about, the pedo bears on the stage. You're like, oh my God, that's horrific. I don't know. But a lot of people thought it was okay. A lot of people think that it's great. And here's the funny thing. We have an FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, not that I'm a fan, but their whole mission is to keep people safe from bad content that would offend. And let me tell you, looking at that offends me. I would rather see the reality of the blood and the gore from car accidents and all of the other things that are real to have a more real effect. I don't need to be cushioned or softened by the media. It's already doing a good enough job. But if there was anything that I think would offend me, my family, and just people in general, I think it would be, lewd acts of disgustingness on your television. But I don't watch the VMAs either. You do have that ability to not. And so some people want the government to do more. I want the government to do less. I can control more. Take the responsibility away from the government to tell me what's moral, what's not moral. The people spoke. It's gross. Maybe if she had better hair, longer hair, didn't look so manly, people would think twerking is cooler. I don't know. Those are the kind of questions that I don't really worry about it late at night when I lay in bed. I don't really think about that too often. But some people did. People were offended. You should be. It's pretty disgusting. But is it more vile? Is it more disgusting than what our own government is doing? Absolutely not. And the people that we're funding and pushing. So anyway, before we get there, I do want to talk about Google. If you haven't heard, Google executives were getting private jet adventures paid for, subsidized by the U.S. government. The Google execs, you know them, you've seen them, are in bed with the NSA. They were also allowed to purchase discounted jet fuel direct from the Pentagon used for personal travel to Pacific Islands, not free science flights for NASA as intended. So here's the deal. You got the government, and they say, hey, guess what? You're doing government stuff with NASA. We love NASA. Excuse me. That's why we're going to give you a better deal on this gas. We're going to cut all those taxes away. You get tax-free gas. Must be nice to take all of your princesses and your family to private islands that you bought with taxpayer-subsidized money. No big deal. Doesn't really offend me that much because, from 4 something a gallon to 3 something a gallon, it's no more horrific than Nancy Pelosi's wine bar bill. Okay, she spent hundreds of thousands of dollars being flown around by the Pentagon. Okay, just as disgusting. But it shows you why Google is working as an asset for the government and why they're turning over your information. And it doesn't take much. It doesn't take a whole lot of stuff. Also, this week, Google got in hot water when it was revealed that the NSA was hiding itself and using the MITM attacks under this certificate. And many already believe that all of these certificates, the SSLs, are, I'm kind of ignorant on how all of it works, but basically there's authentication that allows your PC and or computer, even Apple, whatever, to know that these are safe sites and take maybe a flash update or something else from Google, maybe. And that's how they mimic. They mimic Google and basically we're able to use this type of attack as Google, using them kind of as a false flag, really. I mean, laying this on Google's feet. And the fact that Google is now being thrown into the headlines and the Pentagon is telling everybody that Google, these guys, they're getting away with it, is kind of it's an assassination attack on Google itself. Not that they already haven't had lots of bad press, but most bad press is targeted. So, not that Verizon or any of these other guys are any better. Notable, if you haven't been paying attention, net neutrality is quietly being attacked. So if you don't like Google and their Google phone, I think they have a new phone that's going to be actually made in America. They're going to make some phones here in Texas. It might be Nokia, though. I don't want to give them too much credit. But anyway, we were talking earlier about the Apple phones, and they could bring all those jobs back here. They're trying to change laws because they can't get anybody to do any work. We can't. They lay off thousands of people, and then they say, well, we can't get people to work here. We just don't have people to do these jobs. We need to change the immigration law. We need to import migrants here to work for the wages that we weren't willing to pay Americans. It's pretty disgusting, but not atypical. This is Verizon's little plan, and they've been working on this, and if you haven't heard about it, don't be shocked. Everybody's watching the debacle play out in Syria, and we're going to get there because there is a lot to say about it, and I've got some audio and other assets that I want to bring to the table. So don't tune out yet if you're not a techie. But ESPN and Verizon are already working under the table to make some of these special plans that they have come to fruition. Basically, the plan is to allow the Verizon subscribers that have data caps, right? You have to pay per gig or some other scheme to get your data from Verizon on your smartphone, or maybe if you're buying broadband or some other internet service, you may be capped. I think this is primarily where they focused, because when it came to landlines, land infrastructure, the government and the telecommunications companies had the foresight to realize that all of that's going. I mean, it's important because you have to have these nodes, you have to have these hardwired pinpoints, but at the same time, everything is moving into the wireless world. And you already see this. But net neutrality, the idea that you pay an internet provider, they give you the same amount of bandwidth, of importance. They prioritize packets to go to any website equally, whether it's blacklistednews.com or ESPN. But what Verizon would like to do is start pushing, and of course it's Disney. It's the Disney empire of media conglomerates and giants that is ESPN. But basically, the people want their sports center. They want their Monday morning quarterbacks and Final Fantasy updates and predictions, and they want it in high speed. So these are the things that are going on in the background. Google working with the NSA, Verizon doing the same, but not getting the heat or attention for it while they are chipping away at net neutrality. So they're really pushing for this. I did want to mention, again, before we get out of the tech center and ESPN and all of this, why these fingerprints, the authentication tokens. This expert from The Independent was saying that that people in countries will now just start going after people's fingers. And I don't know if this is true, but I could see this in a lot of other scary places where people will not only steal your iPhone. I mean, people would kill people, 20 years ago in this country for their Nikes, for their Air Jordans, literally. 20 years ago, people were killing for shoes. I can only imagine what people would do for iPhones. And we've all seen, if you haven't seen some of the horrific stories and examples, we don't cover them a lot because they're just so sad. They're so sad. But people doing all sorts of things, selling their bodies, selling their children, selling their souls for the ability to get the next phone. People are addicted to it. People really want it. So anyway, the fingerprint tokens, we'll see how popularized this gets. But they are making it more mainstream. The 5S is basically the same thing. This is the only big selling point for it. Anyway, I mean, it's one of these deals where people get so excited about it. But I don't know. I don't keep up with those stories, but I do find myself reading more of them. But I just don't think that they're important. It's kind of like the rhesus monkeys in Florida. They have herpes. There's an out-of-control epidemic of monkeys that have herpes out of Florida. Yeah, Florida. Whenever you read one of these crazy stories that's beyond belief, whether it's people on bath salts eating other people's faces, whether it's just people getting sucked into sinkholes, people's dogs, missing, chupacabras, skunk monkeys, it all emanates out of Florida. And I've got a lot of friends that are in Florida, but it is the dong of America, to quote Mr. Charlie Hodge. It is the dong of America, and there's always just something that is going on there. I mean, it's a big state, too, but my God. I don't know. Maybe it's all the sun. But, I put it up because it's just like, wow, really? It's just that crazy. It's like TSA agents being arrested for smuggling illegal aliens. That came on the wire last night, or came over the wire. Not pun not intended. Last night, and I mean, why wouldn't you think that TSA agents would be, smuggling illegal aliens? How could they not be? Just like the government. How could the government not be selling cocaine? Why would you think that it's not? So anyway, it's pretty ridiculous. So there you go. Now you're up on the fascist tech takeover and the redefining of journalism and some of the other things that are happening that we should be paying more attention to, the loss of privacy in this country. But we have a deal on the table. So let's segue into Syria here now that we're in hour 2. Let's see. NPR basically breaks down what's happening on the ground here at the morning edition, and they're talking to one of the Syrian commanders who is saying that we now have weapons on the ground, now boots on the ground, and we've known that this has been happening for quite some time, and we know that all of the weapons that have been brought over, not to mention that there's over 1,500 people that were released. We're talking about murderers and those serving life sentences in Saudi Arabia. It's just got so crazy what's happening over here. I mean, just the loss of any moral compass. Saudi's sending, death row prisoners, murderers, rapists, killers. Let's just send those people over to Syria. So it's just like a place where they're just throwing the worst people ever. And this is always, and it's not really talked about, but this is always an aspect of war that most people don't notice. And that's, in the U.S. has been doing this for years, and that's where the U.S. and other imperialists bring hordes of criminals, of people that the ne'er-do-wells, the societal non-friendlies that you want to get rid of, and you just throw them upon another country. We have it in Las Vegas. Las Vegas just rounded up 1,500 people. They're homeless and gave them one-way bus tickets to California, to San Diego. They're like, guys, it's beautiful. The weather, it's lovely. You want to get on the bus. Well, San Diego's now in this lawsuit because they're thrusting these, let's be honest, the undesirables. That's the word I was looking for. Undesirables in Las Vegas and shipping them out. Dallas has been doing it and sending them to Austin, Texas, where I live. And if you go downtown on any evening, there's this huge section of people, and it's literally like the night of the living dead. Money, give me money. People that are, mostly, mentally ill and alcoholics that are trying to shake you down for money. So that's central planning at its finest. Let's go ahead and stick all of these homeless shelters right into the entertainment district, where you have young, drunk kids that have money and jewelry. Let's put them right next to them. I mean, it's a testament to why government and their ridiculous plans don't work. They don't work because they don't have the foresight, and they have too many financial interests that are at the heart of the matter, and other interest groups that are formulating these piss-poor designs and plans. Well, the war in Syria is not much better. It's not going very well. So basically there's this chemical weapons deal, and everybody's hailing Putin as this world-renowned superhero that has brought us from the precipice, from the brink of war. We'll see if that's short-lived. This is starting to look a lot more like Iraq, where we now have, we have people, UN boots on the ground, that are going to be inspecting the chemical weapons that they have. And let's not forget the hypocrisy here. I have to give it to Assad for pointing out that if anybody should disarm, and now that he has a leg up, now that they've been brought to the table, he's becoming more vocal and a little bit empowered. You can tell that the war hawks are not thrilled by this. But he said, of all people, Israel should disarm first because they have nuclear, biological, and chemical arms. And this is the one question that I'm not hearing anybody in the mainstream media ask, and that is, well, if these are so horrible, so horrific that they have no use, there are international conventions that prohibit these weapons from being used, then why the hell do we have VX and sarin gas to the tune of billions of gallons of these weapons in the Western world? Why do we have these weapons? Maybe not billions. I'm embellishing there. Hundreds of thousands of gallons worth of chemical weapons. Why do we store them in the United States? Why do we have them here? Who are they going to use those weapons on? What is the intent? Who needs to be gassed in this country and other countries? And at what point, where's that red line where the government says, well, we need to start gassing people? Because obviously there is one, otherwise they would have no use for them. I'm just asking obvious questions that most people should, pointing at the hypocrisy. Why do they have them? If Israel's not going to use them on their own domestic population and it's so horrendous and so illegal, why do they need them? Why are we still selling cluster bombs to Saudi Arabia? I'm not trying to quote Mr. John Kerry, who just talks too much. He could do 5 hours of monologue on this show, and he would just keep talking and talking. But anyway, so Assad has been a little bit more mouthy. He said now he wants the government, the U.S. government, to stop arming the terrorists. You got to stop arming these terrorists. Meanwhile, we now have guns, at least the admission of them. And that's where we're going back to. That's where I wanted to bring this to the NPR clip. So here we go.
American officials contend they really are beginning to provide weapons to Syria's rebels. They say this after the head of the Free Syrian Army denied it. General Salim Idris was on Morning Edition yesterday, and the rebel leader said several times on this program he is not getting any, quote, lethal materials from the United States.
No military support, no direct military support.
You're telling me that if any weapons are getting to any rebels, they're not getting to you. Is that correct?
No, that is correct. We didn't receive any weapons from our American friends.
The general said his troops are still waiting for help. He even denied a Washington Post report that the weapons are finally arriving after much delay. NPR Pentagon correspondent Tom Bowman has been putting all this to his sources. Tom, good morning.
Good morning, Steve.
Okay, so what do Pentagon officials or other officials in the government say they are actually doing?
Well, we've been hearing that the weapons are starting to move into Syria, small arms, assault rifles, machine guns. And this is all part of a covert CIA program. They've been providing some training as well. But back in June, there was a decision to give the Syrian opposition some weapons, again, small arms. Mm-hmm. That has been hung up in Washington, and one of the issues is we have to make sure that these weapons go to moderate rebel groups. And that apparently they've worked out those problems, and the weapons are starting to flow in, but again, in small numbers and small arms. We're talking...
Okay, so we know that they've been arming the rebels for quite some time, and while the Saudi Arabians have been financing private mercenaries, they were paying people on the dole to fight. We know that the U.S. government had up to 1,000 Assad police officers on the U.S. payroll. So who are you fighting? What's really going on here? The American people are starting to see through a lot of this. It's starting to become more and more clear that these weapons are here on the ground, and, well, who knows what they really are. They're admitting machine guns today, but they're saying they're not weapons of mass destruction. Okay, so where are they getting these different gas weapons? I mean, now even Kerry is saying, well, we don't really know. That's the change in the story, that we don't really know who did this. Okay, fine, we can't prove it. The Human Rights Watch group, which is this Israeli front that has brought this intelligence to the masses, is highly questionable. Okay, Assad himself has said that he did not do this, and now the news story is that, well, maybe Assad didn't do this. And if you watch the Charlie Rose interview, the unmolested interview with Bashar al-Assad, it was very, very interesting to see how little of that and some of the more poignant remarks that he made were completely omitted from any of the mainstream media circulation of talking points. I didn't hear anything from some of the other things that he's done. So there's been some punches in all of this. So that now Assad is saying that he's got conditions. This after the presser with Sergei Lavrov, who is the counterpart to John Kerry for Russia, laying down this maybe brilliant move. I mean, we know that the government's already been fighting this war for some time. The U.S. government has been heavily invested in the Syrian war. Why? Because we're giving aid, comfort, and weapons and creating a parallel government who's already selling oil contracts to countries like Qatar. So, and they were the first to reap the oil benefits from Libya. And they also are pretty upset about the fact that it's not quite meeting expectations, the profit potential, that is, because of protesters that keep burning and blowing up the pipelines to extract said oil from Libya. They're saying that they're losing billions monthly from protesters. I'm surprised they call them protesters even. I'm surprised it's not terrorists, because everybody's a terrorist if they aren't being paid by the State Department, apparently, allegedly, in my opinion. So he's got his own problems, and he's got his own demands. We'll see where all of this plays out. I think that it ultimately doesn't end well, because I know at the end of the day that the game plan, and it's been the game plan since 2001, was to overthrow Bashar al-Assad. The implementation of that plan, being able to do it, maybe not as easy as they thought, not going to plan. I mean, anything that's beyond I think a 3 to 5 year timetable, that's nobody can forecast beyond that point, because, let's be honest, shit changes. Things change quickly. So, anyway, there's this expert. We were talking about the Human Rights Watch organization that's, the only one that's really trying to, or has been the source for all of these claims, these allegations against Bashar al-Assad. And they had some other recording of somebody talking about some gas, which is not in the least that interesting. And people just don't buy it. It's not much. Like, okay, well, there's a lot of gas being blown around over here. Now Kerry's saying that it may have been the rebels. And now we have this distinction. And I like this. This shows that the conversation is definitely declining. And now we have terrorists, Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, Al-Nusra, or whoever, people that wave black flags and have their children singing songs about September 11th and killing Americans and jihad and, bringing back the Khalifa. Those radical, crazy people that are eating Christians and chopping them up. It's so hard to keep all of this off the internet. Imagine the Vietnam War with smartphones. Oh, people would be pretty upset about the fact that Americans were collecting Viet Cong ears, putting them in jars of formaldehyde and shipping them back to the United States. People would think that's pretty grim and screwed up. Not so much anymore. It's very progressive. It's very progressive. And now, well, I mean, these guys are happy. They're excited. They're trying to use this fear tactic to scare the hell out of the population, because they're trying to fight a ground war. And a ground war being fought by terrorists, it's pretty ugly. It's pretty brutal. You have people chewing on one another. It's like they're high on bath salts. I think they got some people from Florida over there. Anyway, back to the point being that all of the reasons in the world for intervention, the U.S. seems to be in a position where they would want that, considering that they are already on the ground. I say they because I do not believe that I am part of that, and as an American, I'm appalled by this, and more of my countrymen, my brethren and sisterin throughout the nation are starting to shake their heads. So the question, of course, is what has to pop off to get this thing going? That's the scary thing. It's a very scary thing, something that could be used to justify it. It's not beyond the government to do that, or other governments or intelligence agencies to pull off something to move the agenda forward. And what I was going to say is that maybe this has been a brilliant move to say, look, we're just going to blow up stuff, okay? Sorry, we've got the intel here. Well, that gets the Assad regime that was in a very powerful position back to the negotiating table and back towards allowing them to soft pedal weapons and terrorists and giving time for Saudi Arabia and Israel and others to round up all of the ne'er-do-wells, people of color, people that are in prisons, and just to thrust those people, you have the citizenry, the refugees that are leaving, going to Turkey, going to Jordan, trying to escape, and then you have the influx of insano, crazy. I mean, it would be like going to like a circus of freaks to just have, just murderers and rapists, and they're putting those people upon the population. mind you. They're not just selectively. Rapists don't selectively go after Assad sympathizers. They're child rapers, molesters. They are murderers, and they are a plague now upon those people. So it is really there's no way I can downplay how evil and diabolical that really is. And it's a tactic that's been used throughout history. It goes all the way back to the Mongols, to probably even preceding Genghis Khan and others. So that's kind of the update. The money grab is already happening. They're already selling contracts. We have this parallel government that, I guess now that they're getting weapons is now going to come back to the table. And we're going to watch all of the theatrics on the political stage, everybody dancing around and the like. So that's what's happening in Syria. See, I had another clip about the weapons, so I don't really remember this. It's one of the bad things about clipping tons of audio throughout the week. Sometimes you forget a little bit of it.
Agreement on Syria's chemical disarmament was reached in Geneva after 3 days of tense talks.
This is the new weapons deal. This came out of RT this morning. Sorry about that. Here we go.
Agreement on Syria's chemical disarmament was reached in Geneva after 3 days of tense talks. RT's Polly Boyko has been following the negotiations for us there and joins us now live. Polly, nice to see you. So tell us more about what's been agreed there and the conditions under which the plan will be implemented.
Well, the press conference kicked off rather unconventionally here in Geneva with Sergei Lavrov strolling into the conference room, sitting in the middle of the room amidst the reporters talking about the weather, clearly waiting for John Kerry to show up. But after 3 days of tense negotiations, a deal has finally been struck. We know that Damascus has got 1 week within which to provide information on all of its chemical weapons facilities. Thereafter, they have to provide access to chemical weapons inspectors from the Organization for Prevention of Chemical Weapons. They have to provide unfettered access to them, to all these chemical weapons facilities. Now, in terms of a time frame, we know that the initial on-site inspections must be completed by November, and finally, the complete elimination of chemical weapons in Syria has to be completed by the first half of 2014. But crucially, if Syria fails to comply with any part of the deal that has been hammered out here in Geneva, well then Chapter 7 of the UN Security Council would be applicable. We can take a listen to John Kerry and Sergei Lavrov talking about that in a little bit more detail right now.
Yeah, and we're not going to listen to that because, he's just blah, 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 blobbing on. And, they want all of these inspections. So they're actually laying this down to where we're going to have more and more people on the ground operating through the UN. So this is opening a lot of other doors. And what we're not hearing is from really Assad. I think that it was pretty brilliant move to basically throw this out on the table. And that's what they did. They threw this out and said, hey, look, we're going to blow you up. We're going to shoot cruise missiles into your country. And, I'm going to go to Congress and we're going to talk about it. And we'll really, kind of stand tough and see what happens. And then you get everybody shifting. Now you get people moving. You get all of your other preparations made for a full-on invasion, and then you move that pendulum. And that's what Barack Obama did. I don't think that there's because this is the meme that John Kerry's an idiot and these people have not played up to how brilliant Assad and Vladimir Putin are. And I just don't dismiss the diabolical nature of all of this. Hey, we look like idiots. George Bush looked like an idiot. And he was able to destroy, under his tenure, what was left of the Constitution. And through the apparatus, the shadow government has been able to basically keep this country in a form of state of emergency, 24 hours a day, where the Constitution is suspended. And that's, not my opinion. Well, actually, it is my opinion because it's based on many other legal scholars' interpretations of the secretness and of Section 215 of the Patriot Act. That came out last week. They finally declassified some of those interpretations and the legal mumbo-jumbo that they use to, let's be honest, call it what it is, to move this forward. Anyway, but just talking quickly about the geopolitical situation surrounding Syria, it's just kind of playing into a prediction that I had, and maybe I didn't have the clairvoyance that I thought I did coming into this, but that the international community, the New World Order, is all about the resolve and the ability for global government to create solutions that sovereign nations cannot. It's about holding nations and even the United States, in some cases, to a higher order. If you look at that idea and think that that's what is being propelled, then this is a perfect moment to highlight how the international community, the International Criminal Court, and the whole system of post-Bretton Woods of having delegations and discussions of appointed people representing governments and nations and corporations beyond the scope of their own domestic population's will. That is the New World Order. It's one of the many flavors to the New World Order, and that is something that I think is being shown. Now, I saw this interview with Michael Hayden, who used to be the head of the NSA, and he was the guy that you guys probably remember, the Chrome Dome, that was talking about that you didn't need probable cause. Back in 2000, I think it was 8, he was quoted saying, probable cause is not part of the Constitution, that they don't have to have that. They don't have to have an oath or affirmation to justify probable cause. So he's making this legal argument. But he was on RT recently and discussed Syria and what's happening in the Middle East in regards to Egypt and the don't call it a coup that's happening there, and the assistance and political ties that the United States has had to both regimes. I think that's very convoluted because you have the military that has been in contact and has been trained by Western governments. They've gone to the schools here under the Pentagon and been trained in CIA torture tactics and the like, learning how to use domestic control, pain, and violence against their people, teaching them how to propagandize and to control. And there's strategic interest. The Suez Canal, it's the biggest elephant in the room. Making sure that global commerce continues. And so for world government, it's got an A+. I mean, the world government came to the rescue and has, if you think that the goal is to continue the global economy or providing security for it, Suez Canal is definitely part of that matrix, then might have done a good job. And I'm just being the contrarian here because I'm not a fan of any of these policies or really any of these governments. The Muslim Brotherhood, I wasn't a big fan of Mubarak and his barbarism. I was not a big fan of what Morsi had done. But when you have chaos in a country, sometimes you enact martial law. I mean, we had that in the 60s during the Watts riots in this country. And LBJ, last time I checked, wasn't called a tyrant by most. Most people pretty much thought that using the military against the domestic population wasn't a bad idea. I mean, not enough to complain about it. Not enough to worry about it too much. So he was able to get away with that, and he wasn't labeled the evil bad guy as Morsi was. And you have people climbing over and throwing Molotov cocktails into the equivalent of the White House to the presidential palace, you got problems. You got big problems. You're only minutes away from assassination. So, but at the same time, I'm not a big fan of that, and I'm not a fan of the opposition, the military, the coup d'etat. So that's a big lose for world government. You had elections, and when elections don't work, the facade fails. Assad has talked about the facade and how the international community basically does a little dance, and it makes it look like it's somewhat diplomatic, and it gives this air of legitimacy to whatever the political agenda may be. He's right. He's absolutely right. And when you look at his track record and the U.S.'s track record and Israel's track record and other allies' track record of using chemical weapons, you really have to turn your nose up to the fact that there is just so much of our own BS that we have to turn away from. That it's just, it's boot level, knee level high. The hypocrisy of all of it. So, we could talk a little bit more about Syria, where it's going, but I think the overall agenda is still the same one. It hasn't moved. There's going to be more of a shift and a focus towards Africa that's happening right now for a moment, but those are all on the table. How they get to that goal, whether they use the resolve of world government, whether that is now being, and I think that's the point, is, I skipped over Michael Hayden and the relevance of his RT interview. Sorry about that. So RT interviews him and asks him some of these questions about what do you think is happening in Egypt, and he says, well, you can only do so much under a war doctrine, under a war era. And he goes on to explain that, after 9/11, the government was able to use emergency law, emergency government to basically suspend the Constitution. He didn't say that in so many words, but during an emergency, you can get away with doing a lot. But then when things are calmer, then you have to have another doctrine. You have to have another phase. And so that the decade leading into the 21st century, or through the through the 21st century was the beginning of it. And think about it for a second. His doctrine is a war doctrine, but that is all shifting. And now we're going to go into a phase where the new doctrine will be world governance. And I mean, it's just very candid and straightforward. And I think that I think that he is a minion. He's a very smart guy, and you don't get into these kind of political positions and become a well-publicized talker and speaker and giving interviews left and right if you're not trying to sell an agenda. And he's trying to sell that agenda. And it's true. I mean, at least from the aspect that the U.S. government was able to get away with so much under the emergency war doctrine aspect. It has used that for empire. So now the next phase is and we played Joe Biden. We played his clip here. And I think that this still rings true for my prediction. And we'll just go back to Joe for a moment. Here we go.
The affirmative task we have now is to actually create a new world order.
There you go. So what are they doing? They've got an affirmative attack plan. It's their affirmative action, and they're going to move forward with it. So what does that mean? What is that? Well, he's going to work with the media, Dianne Feinstein, to make sure that whatever it is, they can sell it to you. They can get it wrapped up by the legitimate media. Yes, the legitimate media. So, I guess, really to summate what is going to happen in Syria, I think we know what the U.S. government would like. So the question is, does that happen? And if they really want it to happen, they will make it happen. There will be justification. We may just be seeing a little pussyfooting around like we did with the lead up to the second Iraq war in 2003. So, put the UN inspectors in. Oh, no, he didn't show it to him. Saddam Hussein's bad. I could see that same tactic being used over and over again. But the only difference now is that you do have the independent alternatives in media that do hold the government to more of an account. You do have contrary viewpoints to the propaganda. Back during the Persian Gulf War, you heard nothing but pro-war propaganda. And I remember it. I was in 7th grade in 91, and I remember it. And I remember having to see it in school through this system called Channel 1, which was basically just a way to get kids to be more consumers. And they had this national rollout, and you're basically obligated to watch these Channel 1 shows that had tons of commercials and some, I guess, maybe quasi-legitimate educational info in there between Skittles commercials, between Pepsi 1 challenges or whatever they were at the time. Pepsi Coke challenges or whatever. Remember those things? We did the Pepsi Coke challenge. It's really no choice where you only have, that's the world we live in, right? Where that is the choice. And that's what I learned in 7th grade, okay? You got communism and capitalism. You got Pepsi and Coke, and you have to pick a team. And then, you have to turn your ears off to any other of the opposing viewpoints because you're on a team. You're for the team. And so, really at the end of the day, you don't want to hear all of the other, unless you're tactful, but most people don't want to hear all the other talking points. So, that we know in Syria that is the overall goal. But how do they do this? Now, I think I have to give a little bit more credit than most do to these bumbling idiots. Just like I said before, with George W. Bush, he brilliantly fumbled us into this huge transformation. So much was done under his watch. I mean, the transfer of global wealth, the changing of laws that allowed those corporations to escape justice at the same time, has done everything he could to install and eviscerate the Constitution and install a parallel shadow government. And he laughed about it, the shadow government. But so the takeaways and what's happened because of that. I mean, everybody wants to blame Obama or blame Bush, and they just become the figureheads for the problems. They become the personification of bad policy. And that's fine, because they do make some decisions, or at least they are the messenger. I think that's important to understand, too, that the president is the messenger, okay? And they always say, don't shoot the messenger, right? It's because he's not making those decisions. He's not the one that is pushing forward legislation in Congress. He's not that guy. I mean, he's just the one that's, wait, executive actions, executive orders. Wait, he is that guy. So I think that, you should definitely lay plenty of blame on his watch, and Bush as well, and all of the people that preceded him, and that we see now that have been working to bring about, at least most of them, past JFK especially, have been about bringing us a new world order. So when Biden says that, don't think that he doesn't have an agenda there. So I think they've moved this forward. Does this make Putin look good? Does this empower them? Does this allow a little arrogance? Hey, I'm the man of the year. They got me on Time magazine. The Putin. Everybody's talking about the Putin. Yeah, this is a big win. I mean, I remember when Muammar Gaddafi was at the UN spouting, toxic rhetoric about Israel and the Zionists. That wasn't too long ago, right before they assassinated him and sodomized him. Before they, go ahead, buddy. You can rabble rouse. So this may be the calm before the storm. This may be, I think, a little bit of a little misdirection, and maybe this is also a very strategic way to talk international peace, but at the same time to flank the Syrian government. I mean, just don't discount people that are controlling the free world, or at least look like they are, and those behind the scenes. I mean, you see, the idiocy in front of you, and I think that's intentional. I mean, if you listen to John Kerry, not very smart. He's not a brilliant guy, and I mean, he's just old too. I mean, I don't know how many Botox injections he's had into his forehead, and what that may have, actually done to his brain capabilities. The vanity will get you. Going out there and yachting all day long and swimming around the ocean. I don't know. Maybe his brain's full of plastic. Maybe he's full of BPA, melamine. I don't know, but he doesn't seem brilliant when you listen to the guy. I don't want to just bang on him for that, but and he looks so fakely tan now. He's aged in a very bad and creepy way, kind of like Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton, one of those ways. Not a good way. I wanted to play this. Harry Reid, talk about out of touch. This is a perfect segue into a little bit of, I don't know what's going on with some of these guys. Harry Reid looks like he's been beat up over and over again. He looks better now, but he had a weird message. And I was turned on to this by Michael Krieger at Liberty Blitzkrieg. It says, we're diverted totally from what this bill is about because the anarchists have taken over. I don't know. You be the judge. Have the anarchists taken over? Has the anarchy movement jumped the shark? Because Harry Reid's talking about it.
A lot of happy talk about what a great piece of legislation this is, and it is. But even though I've worked with Senator Shaheen and Senator Portman, there will be no amendments. We've got them all. We've got all bipartisan amendments. Of course, we're diverted totally from what this bill is all about. Why? Why, Mr. President? Because the anarchists have taken over. They've taken over the House. Now they're here in the Senate.
What does that mean? The anarchists have taken over the House and the Senate? I see a lot of D's. I see a lot of R's. There's a couple I's. Independence. There's there's a couple people that maybe don't philosophically agree with Harry Reid, but not that many. I mean, when you look at the voting record, so he's talking about energy policy here, and he is the majority leader from Nevada. But I don't get this.
The Speaker couldn't pass a simple CR today. When asked at a press event yesterday, as I was reported to me on the news today, they said, "What's next?" He said, "You have a couple ideas? Give them to me. They'll be shot down also." We're in a position here where people who don't believe in government, and that's what the Tea Party's all about, are winning. That's a shame.
Yeah, people are starting to think outside of the box. And hey, don't get me wrong. I don't think that the Tea Party and their motivations, or many of them that claim to be part of the Tea Party, their motivations are necessarily good, or that they're going to, provide said or desired result. It's anarchy sounds great, I guess. I mean, and I am kind of an anarcho-capitalist, or I believe that in that philosophy that it would bring about a better, more fair state. And there's plenty of examples where non-regulation does a lot better than regulation. But I've also seen the transference of public debt or private debt into public obligation, and vice versa, as far as privatizing industries and how that has adversely affected the quality. So people are still being taxed, but that money's being diverted to corporate interests that provide these services. And that is fascism. You don't need Dianne Feinstein to hop on board with that. And that, maybe that's what Harry Reid's talking about. People like myself that just see through that matrix of silliness. Prime example, there's a company now that's been privatized and that is going to be inspecting meat. And if you haven't heard about it and you're about to eat your morning breakfast, you might want to turn the podcast off. But their range of acceptable policies was to allow chunks of fecal matter to get into the food supply. Okay, so they have a pretty low standard of what it is to be healthy. And there's just, it's not a question of whether you're eating crap. It's just a matter of how much crap you're eating, really, when it comes down to most processed food packers that, meat providers, stuff that you're going to get that, at the grocery store from your McDonald's hamburger. The pink slimes also, by the way, coming back to school lunches. That used to be a big problem. People were really offended by the fact that they're taking ammonia and tendon meat and other organ meat and spinning it into centrifuges to provide this. The idea is that it's not going to be rotten and, spoiled and kill you because, you're eating cheap subpar meat that's probably a few years old. This is just the next level of weird crap science that we're eating. But that's coming back, and some of these schools, there's a few of them, at least that have made national headlines, that have tried to forbid people from allowing their children to eat their own sack lunches or to bring their own sack lunches to school. Can you imagine that? You can't. No. As parents, you can't give your kids Cheetos. They can't make that decision for themselves. You can't give them a Coca-Cola, even though everything that's in these books and most of the science that you read today is sponsored by some corporate interest. All of a sudden, they get moral. Oh no. That's a conflict of interest. Really? Okay. They don't mind taking Pepsi-Cola or Coca-Cola grants for, student education, but when it comes to allowing you to buy one for your kids or to have them there, it's a way that they justify why they know more than you. Talk about condescending. But there's a couple places that have tried it, and luckily enough, there is enough media and attention now on the internet to stymie them. And how much longer you'll be able to get that priority traffic to blacklistednews.com and to this podcast, I don't know. I think that there's always going to be a way, but they're trying to. Well, they've realized that they've lost control of something that they should have been much more involved in, and that's because most of these people on the Hill and in the halls of government are completely compromised and out of touch. I keep saying that. They're out of touch. They're more interested in their own personal vacations and drinking and chasing women or showing their genitalia to people on Twitter than they really are in creating the New World Order. That's one of the things that we have working for us, people. It is one of the few things that is moving things forward. And we do have some of those Tea Party activists that are infuriating Harry Reid here, throwing wrenches into the engine of empire, if you will. So that's pretty exciting too. People are, starting to realize that government should work in their best interests, and government's going to have to do a lot more. People like Harry Reid are going to have to do a lot more, and they're going to have to talk to us again. They're going to have to tell us why. They're going to have to explain to us why it is that they do what they do. You're not going to get the easy pass anymore. You're not going to have the media syndicate covering your ass and all of your lies and covering up for you, and the financial sector papering over everything. So, sorry, Harry Reid. By the way, this is coming, so just remember you heard it here first. This is the big news of the day, and this is probably going to be the October surprise for many in the UK. EU lawmakers are now giving the European Central Bank new powers. This is a complete takeover of banking. This is the technocratic dictatorship and monetary union that has come out of these failed policies and this failed attempt to create a new world order. European lawmakers now are being granted, by themselves that is, powers to the central bank on Thursday to supervise up to 6,000 Eurozone banks, the first step in building the bloc's flagship banking union. Woo! Hello, that's happening in the background. That is huge. 6,000 banks, a public banking union, a complete takeover. And that's why they've been going after and targeting individual banks. And that's why those were also led to slaughter by force feeding them, in many cases, under the threat of arrest and of intervention, to take these toxic assets upon their banks and the obligation to be part of this system. We'll save you this time, buddy, but guess what? If you don't want to be held liable and you don't want to have your assets froze and we come in and we take your money, you're going to, number one, we're going to have an EU banking technocrat at your bank, and he can do whatever he wants. And in return for that relationship, that cooperation, we'll give you preferential treatment. Your deposits will be government sanctioned. Oh, by the way, if you got money outside of the U.S., or maybe your bank has money or your money outside of the U.S., you may not know about this. The government's making a little change in the background, a little change to everything, and that is that they're no longer going to FDIC insure your deposits if they're not inside of the contiguous continental United States. So, might want to look into your banking situation. Might want to see what's up with that and see if that's applicable to you. Most people, it's not, and they know that. That's why they're going to go after those. I mean, just like in Cyprus, that have a certain amount of money, and it's going to be a few $100,000. That way, it seems like they're only going after the rich, fat cats. Well, people that have saved for retirement that are not completely subsidized by the state would be the type of people that would have a few $100,000. And if you have a few $100,000, you are not rich. I'm in the process of buying a new home, and you know what you can get in the area that I'm looking for? $140,000 to $200,000, up to $250,000. Not a lot. Not what you think you could get. If you were willing to spend $250,000, then of course I don't have that. I don't have $250,000, nor do I think that they would actually loan it to me. They probably would because they're idiots. But just trying to be in the market today is the housing market is, or buying a house in it and trying to sell in this market is pretty crazy. It's really crazy, and how little you get for so much money is a direct representation of how the dollar has been devalued and why we don't have any kind of connection to reality in those prices. And home prices are just they're out of control. And if you don't have the money to pay for it, you look for a $120,000, $140,000, $150,000 home, which is, you're going to be paying upwards of $1,000 a month on your mortgage if you get a 30-year right now at the interest rates. You're not getting that much. You're really not getting that much, and you never really own it. So it is cheaper and sometimes more advantageous than renting, and that's why I'm looking to buy a new home. That way we have a bigger studio, at least, or one that's more isolated. The size is actually fine. It's just the layout and the ability to get away from all the other things that have happened or that happen day to day, and we get sometimes interrupted here on the podcast. That's because it is organic and we don't have a business office that we operate out of. But that's also because really, we don't waste resources and what little we do get and the support that we do get from listeners. And I want to thank DJ. There's one person to thank who sent $100 in after the last show. And I didn't have his name, and I could throw out where he lives, but I didn't receive an email, and I sent him one. But I do want to thank him for sending in $100 because that is really value for value. You know, people that find value in this commentary and the analysis and want it to continue, that find this to be more entertaining and informative than other media, and appreciate the work that we do put into this. And I say we because it requires a lot of other people to put together this show. Number one, all of the investigative journalists that write the content through the news articles, to my lovely wife who allows me to spend so much time dedicated to doing this. So when I say we, I mean collectively, of course, you out there that listen to this podcast. So if you want to support us, you can do that at blacklistedradio.com. That's a great way. We can also use your voice, and you can use your voice to support the work that we do and the great media that we try to put forward, and holding people to account, and holding these political ideologues and ideologies, and exploring those, and expanding on some of the rhetoric that we hear. So I think it's really important. We're a counterpunch. We're a counterbalance to a lot of that. And I want to thank all of the people that download the podcast, to you out there, because I know that we gear this and the other show that I do with Charlie McGrath, Doomcast 7. If you didn't catch that on Wednesday, go to doomcast.com or the Spreaker channel, or if you're subscribed to this podcast via RSS or iTunes, you get it there as well. But we explored a lot, and it was on the anniversary of 9/11, so really interesting discussion, and we extended it for an extra 40 minutes. So definitely trying to keep everything prolific, looking at some other media opportunities in the near future, and I'll keep all of you insiders up to date on that, moves and changes to schedules and things that we may do in the near future. But the one thing that you can rely on and know is that we will continue to do more and more of this. And so the content, the media the times that we do it may change, but we're going to continue to do the podcast. It's so important to me, and it's such a great venue for me to be able to talk about these issues and to point people to resources. And at the same time, working with great people like Charlie McGrath is really fun. And, looking at different types of media and, trying to put those forward is always really, really, really fun for me. So, it's not that I don't enjoy doing it, and it's all a tedious labor. I absolutely do love, talking about issues that make people uncomfortable. I know that sounds odd, but it's true. I mean, things that really make us question what we're doing. And that's what I try to do at blacklistednews.com. It's not so much always about what they are doing. It's how we respond to it. And so the overwhelming response to the podcast has been continually awesome. And you guys and gals especially are superlative in that regard. So continue to tell people about the show. It's a great way to support it. I understand times are tough, and money and resources are short. So thank you for spending your time with me this Saturday morning, or downloading the podcast at some other point in the very near future. I will be back next Saturday at 10 a.m. Central for another live edition. Well, no, that's not my bumper. Come here. That's not my outro. Voila. There we go. That's much better. All right, so I'll be back at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time for another live edition of Blacklisted Radio at blacklistedраdio.com next Saturday. And Doomcast number 8 coming up next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. Check that out, doomcast.com. Thanks to you chatting, all of you great people there in the chat room, and have a great week. Take care.